be creating two different pages, one with the traditional box model and the other one is the flex box. Now the content in the two pages can be the same. It is the external CSS file that is going to be different. And I have two examples, and it is the same exact content in both. Okay, this is actually something that I'm going to be using. So you can see I actually outlined these boxes so they'd be very easy for people to recognize. But this is the traditional box. And then here's my flex box. You can see it looks a little bit different. Okay, but this is the flex box model. And so you're going to be doing something fairly similar. And this sample code is basically what you need for your HTML file. Now, you could use Listing 420 as a model, but that had a lot more in it, and it's basically kind of over the top, more than you need. So this is basically what you need. So you can actually copy this, highlight it, copy and paste it right into VS Code. Now, I do expect you to customize this because you can do the page on whatever you want. So if you have music as a hobby, do it on music. Okay? If you're into art, do it on art. I like running, so I could do a running page. Okay? So you can pretty much do it on whatever you want. You do need a title. You need to come down here and enter a title that's going to show up on the page, because remember, this up here just shows up on your tab. You need to basically customize every single area that has generic text. So when I correct this, I don't want to see enter your page title here. I want to see a title for your page. Okay? I want you to put content in here. Okay, so I'm kind of giving you the structure, but I am expecting you to have content. Okay, so you're going to go through and customize this, and even the bottom footer section, I do not want to see my name. Okay, so I want you guys to customize it. It's your page. Now, if you want to see more of the actual code that I used, if you display the page, you can actually right-click and use View Page Source. And that actually shows you the actual codes that I used. Okay, and it gives you a link here to the CSS, but I've also given you a link to the CSS that I used. Now for the CSS for your page should be called Traditional Box. The CSS should be in the CSS folder for Lesson 6, and you should be calling it traditionalbox.css. Okay, and if you want, you can use this as kind of a model, but I do want you to customize it. I don't want you to use the font size, everything that I use. Customize it, make it your own. Okay, find your own background image if you want one. You don't have to have a background image. You can just zap this section and delete it. Okay, do your own footer code and your own header code. If you want to keep the aside, and I can show you the aside on my page is the date. And I absolutely positioned this because I didn't like how it was interacting with my floating boxes or my child items in my flex box. So I actually kind of moved it out of the way. Okay, so if you don't want the aside, you can get rid of it. You don't have to keep it. It's your page. You can decide on the content. You can see here, because this is the traditional box, that all of the sections have float left. Okay, so that is why they are side by side. Now they are constrained by the width, okay, and it'd be the width of article, the article element. And so this last box here could not fit, so it wrapped down to the next line. Okay, so if you look wherever article is, I believe it's article that's constraining it. It may be body. Let me look. So I've got my sections. These are all set to float. I do have the body set at a width of 75. So that must be what is constraining this. Okay. So in this traditional box, it's the body. It's different in the flex box. We'll take a look at that next. But for this one, you do need the float left. You do need to have some kind of a parent element that is constraining. In this case, it's body, but it could also be article. I mean, you could set that up on article as well. Your headers should have, your headings should have styling, your links should have styling, the header and the footer should have styling. Okay, and you decide what styling you want. Okay, and if you need a starting point, by all means, you can copy this. Okay, so this was traditional. Once you finish traditional, what I would recommend is to save it under the name, Flexbox model. And for the CSS, do the same thing. Just save it under the new name. Okay, and then you just have to make a couple little tweaks to create the Flexbox. So creating the Flexbox, when you look at the CSS, the body is the same. The footer is the same. The header is the same. I added an article because the article is the parent container in my Flexbox. Okay, so you can see that I did use WebKit, and I've got display set to flex. I've got a height setting. I did turn on overflow. I turned on wrapping. I also turned on align items so that they would be center. And I do like the justify content with, I like things evenly spaced. I'm a little weird like that. Okay, so I did turn on that all up in my parent container. And you can see the aside I didn't change. That is still absolutely positioned. Then we get down into it, this section. The section is my child element. Okay, so I have flex set to 1. And I did set a minimum width and a minimum height. And that's, I think, a good idea when you're using the Flexbox, just because it, especially if you have content in it, because it automatically resizes everything. And I don't want it to be smaller than a particular size. So I figured the smallest I wanted it to be, set that as my minimums. And I also did set overflow to auto. Okay, but my headings stayed the same, my links stayed the same. Okay, so I didn't have to change all of that much to create the flexible box. Okay, so if I didn't want, this last one to be so big, I could have set a max width as well. But I kind of like how it looks. It looks very nice and balanced. It's kind of up to you. You can set a minimum width and a minimum height, but you can also set a maximum. And it's sometimes a good idea to do that on a Flexbox layout. So you do have to do the traditional box. You have to do the flexible box. And you're going to have, separate pages and separate CSS for each one. Then you're going to update your assignment page. So in the textbook assignment section, you're going to add lesson 6. And this is how your code should look. Then in the supplemental section, you are going to add the traditional, the Flexbox, and the assignment page. And this is how your code should look. And, assuming that you named your files the same as I did. Now, if you use different naming conventions, then yours is going to look different. Okay, so once you have all of this done, then you can go ahead and transfer everything to the web. And I'm going to do a little separate video on transferring because I've noticed there's some issues with that.